Hey guys, Ash here again for another weekly update. So, I'm a bit late this week, I'm sorry. I've been way too busy with stuff at work and I haven't really had much of a chance to do anything about it. But, lucky, I have got some good things to show off. I've got my new dash and it looks amazing. I don't know whether we can pick up the gloss, but it is really, really good. When I say my new dash, it's my dash that I made, but Chris from Ozwest Fiberglass painted it for me. So we've got the dash back from paint, which is really, really great. It means I can start wiring it now. I didn't want to wire it because I'm basically wiring it so it can't be unwired easily, and there'll be a plug on the dash, so you can pull the dash out, but it'll be a matter of unplugging it. So yeah, got the dash. The other thing I've been up to is I've connected up all of our hydraulic lines now for the steering. That was a bit of a mission, but it's done. So we've got the, I don't know what this one is. It's either left or right. One of the pressure lines there. This is the heat rated hose. This is the stuff you want to use. These particular ones, I think they're rated for 4,000 psi. So I've done that. I finished. I made up a new oil line for the return. So on a previous video I spoke about, I made a bit of a boo boo, and I had it coming out of the engine into the oil filter through the oil cooler, through the accumulator, and then back into the engine. I wanted to change it so the oil filter was the last thing, so we've done that. Had a slight issue when I was doing the work on the power steering system. See if I can turn you in there. And I stripped the thread on one of these on these coolers. So I decided I'd weld these fittings onto there instead. So I've pressure tested the cooler. It wasn't worth getting rid of it. It all seems to be okay, so I'm going to run it. Finished hooking up all the pressure lines in here. Bit of a spaghetti mess in there at the moment. Did a bit of wrapping of the cables to stop any kind of rubbing. Just been doing a bit of just general tidy up. So like, got in here, this is the power steering reservoir. Got a temperature sensor in there. Got the cable tied in nice and neat. So it's just been doing a few little things, but unfortunately they all take a lot of time. So these are tied in, these cables, these hoses. These hoses are off the pressure relief valve for the power steering. So we got all them in, and yeah, that's about it for as much work as I've got done. I had a couple of questions on wiring, and I thought I'd just briefly touch on them. Basically, they were to do with the starting system on your car. it's always good to think of your. I'll just pop this up here for a sec. Here we go. So it's always good to think of your daily driven car for reference. And one of the things is most cars would have a key switch, right? And the first position, you get in the car, you put your key in, and you turn that key one click. And that one click is generally your accessories. So your accessories, they're things like spotlights, radios, CB radios, aircon fans if you're doing that kind of thing. General accessories. They're not necessarily needed. They're things that aren't that important. And then the next click is usually the ignition. And when you click that ignition, the next position on the key switch, that's when you give the ECU power if you're running an ECU. If you're not running an ECU, it's probably when you put power onto your ignition control module. So it's when you're putting it's that next click, you're giving the ECU the power, you're giving the injectors their power supply, your coils a power supply. Now you're just giving them the power. They're obviously not going to just start injecting and sparking, because that will be controlled via the ECU. So I've got this. I've got a couple of diagrams here. A couple of diagrams of a starting circuit. Now, so we've got our main battery, and you can see we've off the main battery we've got a 20 amp fuse feeding an EFI relay. Now, you're not always going to have an EFI relay. You might have a different setup, but usually this is like the injector relay, or in my case I'm calling it the EFI relay. And this, you can see, it actually puts power onto the injectors. Now this part about it, the powering the ECU pins and blah blah blah, that's probably not going to be relevant to you. If you've got an Mtron, it is going to be relevant. But for the most part, if you're running, say, an LS1 or an LS2, and you're running a standard computer, you're, depending on how you wire it up, you're probably going to have the ignition. You'll probably call this. You'll probably have on your ignition relay, you might have all your injector supplies, or you might have a separate injector relay. But I suppose it all depends on your application. But I suppose the point I'm trying to make is, you have these relays, and they're all doing different parts of the ignition or the startup procedure on the car. So if we go back to the key switch, when we switch to the ignition, we're putting power onto our ignition relay, which is normally your coils, and depending on your situation, you might have injectors on that system as well. But typically you'll also, at that point, power up your fuel pumps, and your fuel pumps will be controlled via the ECU. but you'll be putting power on them at this point. Now, if you don't want to run a key switch, that's no big deal, because essentially a key switch is 2 or 3 switches. It's generally 2 toggle switches and a push button all in one. So it's quite easy to change. It's quite easy to supplement a 3-position key switch for a couple of toggle switches. So here's a toggle switch, just for reference. Just it's straight on and off, very simple. So you could have 2 of these and a momentary push button. I don't know if I've got a momentary push button around, but basically it's a button that when you press it, the instant that you let it go, it do have one. Got one in here. Is that a momentary? No. So that's a toggle. This one here, on, off. That's a toggle. That's not a momentary. Where's my momentary switch? I do have one, because I use it for the, oh there it is. I use it for the push to talk. So this switch here, this is a momentary switch. So when you push it, there's no click. It's just you're on, and the instant you let go, it's off. On, off. It's no like, you're not toggling it on and it stays on. It's only on while you're holding it in. So that's what a momentary push button is. And that's the kind of push button you need for a starter. Because you want to be able to push and it start while you're pushing your finger on it, and the instant you let go, it stops turning the starter motor on. Alright, I'm not going to babble too much because I already did a bit of a video, but my audio's stuffed up and I can't be bothered redoing it. So, on that note, I'm being a bit lazy this week. I'll catch you all later. Tom's going to come down this weekend, I think, so we might get a fair bit done on the truck, which would be good. We might even be in a state of being able to start it, because now that I've got all the oil, all the hydraulic lines on, and I've done the oil system, I need to get myself a new oil filter. Unless I've got one on the shelf. I think I need to buy one. So I think I need a new oil filter. We'll fill it up with that Penrite goodness, and yeah, there's a bit of dicking around. I've got to get some darty washers for the couple of the sensors, otherwise we're going to have fluid leaking everywhere. But otherwise, yeah, we'll leave it there. Guys, if you want to know anything, I will do a video on it for you, so just ask in the comments. And yeah, we'll catch you next week. Cheers.